That's an
No,
interesting mix, isn't it? Like, if there's no police presence, then it does result in more crime, but also if there's too much police presence, it also does result in more unrest at the same time. So what has happened as a result of that, do you think? Or did you see?
just well, it's caused a lot of people who would be totally in favor of protests to now become um, dissatisfied, angry, afraid. That's what it's done.
Right, and I think the problem is the means of which people become police in this country because you can become a police in my state in like 10 months to a year. You don't have to go to college or anything. You should have to go to college. You should be able to get a degree in law enforcement in order to become a cop. We have cops, they literally become cops because they want to feel powerful, because they want a position of power and they abuse that power. It's the same thing like there have been teachers I've had where I can tell the only reason they're a teacher is because they want to take advantage of people. They want to be the person in the room who's in charge. And that's
I'm
the
with
same
you.
thing with police.
I agree both of those points.
Yeah.
Jola, did you want to bring this other guy in?
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah, I'm not used to using Discord for this kind of stuff. Yeah, you're in here then, Banu, if you want to talk and join in the conversation. But what you guys were talking about, law enforcement, that's one of the biggest failings of the left messaging, in my opinion, is how
Yes.
people are just
Yes.
saying, like, F the police. All police are evil. When in reality, dude, we all know, being on the left, you want to see the systems that are affecting the individuals. Blaming the individuals does nothing except make us look like, assholes and make us look stupid because obviously all cops aren't bad, and saying that is ignoring the systemic issues and working against our own interests. Because if you're saying F all police, how are we ever gonna change the police and focus on the systems if we're not even doing that?
Right.
I
Okay.
agree.
If I can interject here to add on to that point, and though my Discord handle is Banu Hanamasaishi, you might know me in chat and on YouTube as What's Bothering Me
Oh, hey, what's
Today.
up? I saw you on Twitter too.
Yeah. On Twitter, I'm Bothered Boy. I actually, that's a very good point about policing and everything, because the biggest problem I have with my fellow leftists is people want to basically talk about theory and looking at the systems, but in America you guys have zero safety net, so everyone has to be working and stressed all the time. So unless you can condense it into some 30-second video or some Fox News talking point, your average Joe on the street isn't going to give a shit, and their immediate gut reaction is going to be something resistant to change. Now, I'm currently having this debate, well, not a debate, but a conversation with a pro-Trump Latino on Twitter, and slowly I feel like I'm starting to win him over to the idea that the police aren't good by pointing out to him, hey, look, the police didn't actually manage to stop protests or rioting, and people are rioting in the first place because of police actions. Well, what's the alternative? And I said, well, here in my city, in my part of Canada, the way we got rid of our terrible drug needle problem and our prostitution problem was with instead of like punitive policing, we had a jobs program. So when there was a bust, they said, hey, look, we're not going to throw you in jail, but you have to be on probation and you have to take some kind of job training. We got a new community center. We expanded local services. We expanded the local library. This was also in the 90s. So they improved internet connection. You have to provide meaningful services and action and a way out of poverty for people in the sort of black market side of things if you want to have any kind of meaningful change and make policing less necessary, because the safest neighborhoods are not the neighborhoods that have the most cops. The safest neighborhoods are the ones that have the most services and stable employment.
Yeah, and that's why I'm saying, like, the left saying police are the issue just isn't true. Of course, the police state is the issue, and we know divesting and investing. And I love the way that's what what's her name? Help me out, Zach. The vice president Walker, right? For
Yes,
Green
Angela
Party.
Walker.
Yes, that's how she phrases it, divesting and investing. And I like that a lot more than defund the police, because I feel like when we're picking our slogans, we really do need to be smart with it. Divesting and investing, I feel like has such more of a collectivist tone to it. And it's really what we're doing. It's
That's
not
good.
distracting from the
Yeah.
message. And it can't be misconstrued like defund the police is as abolishing the police. Because obviously we don't want to do that. I mean, we don't believe in like this big mentality of law and order in the sense that conservatives do talk about it. But of course, police are necessary. It's just we're doing it wrong in America.
Well, I mean, you have a situation in Washington State, right, where they took over a section of Washington. I mean, that's kind of creepy, isn't it?
Yeah, and
Well, you got to think about it this way
Yeah.
too. It's like, who would replace the police if sort of an anarchist system came about? It would be the mafia. It would be gangs. So
I think
Oh, hang on. I would challenge that, but I think Kama got in there before me, so I'll let him speak.
okay.
yeah, some people's arguments is of defunding the police is we need to invest more in like other social programs. Like instead of calling the police, you call a hotline for mental health. Like if you had like a domestic issue in the house, if your parents were fighting and you're like getting violent, you would call like a, domestic abuse center. You have them come over, you have them settle the issue, and it would be much more peaceful, much more pragmatic than calling the police and then having even more tension. But I don't agree with defund the police. I think, if anything, we need to invest more in policing. We need to invest more in police training and, give police more of an idea of what it means to be a law enforcer.
Nobody's arguing with police training and police reforms. I would like to see like an Elizabeth Warren style federal agency which would deal with these sort of things.
If I can give you guys an outside of America perspective, here in Canada we have a lot of natives, and so the association with police, especially the federal police force that we have here in Canada, the RCMP, is not really a good one for the most part. And so a lot of Native communities have tried to find alternative ways of policing, which we're now looking into as hopefully viable alternatives. A lot of these tend to take into account Native cultural and spiritual practices. And there's an example, I believe, somewhere up in the Yukon, which it's this town. They really only have, it's kind of a split policing duty. They have four, I guess you could call them patrol officers. They don't carry guns. At the most, they have like mace, handcuffs. I don't think they even carry tasers. And there's a detachment of 2 RCMP, and the RCMP are only called if shit gets absolutely very real. Otherwise, it's just these 4 Native guys who know the community, they know their elders, everyone knows them. So there's already that kind of understanding and trust, and knowing that they're going to treat elders in the community with respect. And so far, it's resulted in way less arrests, way less domestic abuse calls, and incidentally enough, the response times for the RCMP have actually significantly increased, because now they know, oh shit, if we get a call from one of these guys, shit's very serious, so we need to go, as opposed to before where it's there's a bear on the property. Like it's a different way of policing without it really being police. A similar thing that's also been studied is this kind of large territorial band council patrol force, if you want to call it that. That's in Northern Ontario, which has like less people in it than, in all of my cities spread out in an area that's the size of Texas. And the purpose of these guys is to sort of be a mix of park ranger, search and rescue, and hey, you shouldn't do that kind of policing. It's a very non-violent form of policing and corrections, if you want to call it that. And the result is they get along very well with the community. The community is willing to work with them. So it has to be usually from the local community. I think if you want to still have policing, it has to be incredibly localized. People from that community to have that baseline of some sort of diplomacy and understanding and common ground.
But what do you do in a large city like New York City, who or which is the police state there is built up to the size of, I forget if it's like, if it was a country, it'd be ranked like the 40th or 30th biggest military in the world.
Yeah, there's
How
more
would you
cops
do
in New
that
York
though?
City
Like,
than there are in the Canadian military.
well, it's just American, when you have such varying wealth distributions and you have a place so chaotic and where the population density is so low, like New York City, how do you manage a community-based system when the place is a private military with their own CIA after the Patriot Act was passed? Like, they have so much funding there. It is the definition of a military. Like, how would you divest that into the community with your solution?
So you basically get rid of, like, I think one of the things that you guys in America can do is that you can to change your precincts and who has power in said precincts and who has to patrol them. Change it so that it has to be a localized force. And if there are suddenly too many cops in one area, then, oh, guess what? That's a convenient and completely police-friendly response to forcing them into early retirement or getting rid of some bad cops. Granted, it's easier said than done because, as you point out, it's a much more complicated, multi-headed hydra of a beast that has a lot of pull and power. But if you can have a kind of more local policing, like the local Jersey boy is going to be patrolling Weehawken because that's where he grew up. If you want cops to get along with the people in Harlem, then it has to be with locals from Harlem. If all of a sudden, oh, well, we suddenly have too many police in some areas, then you can restructure it that way slowly over time. And if there's too much pushback, you could, even though of course it's not going to be popular, but with enough determination and power, you could go for the air quotations nuclear option, which is you fire the police and rehire new ones. This is actually what several third world countries, well, I shouldn't say third world, newly industrialized countries have been doing in parts of Latin America, Africa, and in various different states in India. When the police were way too corrupt, they said, you're all fired and we're hiring new people fresh out the get-go. And they had like some kind of state oversight to make sure that no one was going to try and bring in their old crony cop pals back in. And it actually resulted in way less corruption. But I know that that is a very nuclear option that would not go down well and would arguably cost more money than trying to redraw precincts and make it so that precincts have to be locally patrolled.
Do you mind if we bring the conversation back to Biden?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, that'd be good.
I mean,
90% of Democratic voters. I mean, this is just continuing, but it reiterates. 90% of Democratic voters voted off of, or not 90, but what was it, like 65 to 70? 90 is a way overstatement and not true. But that number of voters was just voting to get Trump out, and they believed the media that socialism would lose to Trump. And I feel like if we had a neoliberal corporatist in power right now, and there wasn't any super scary Trump for these people to go against, we would have a much better chance to win, even with all this stuff. So. But what you said about all this brewing
so it would be Hillary against Bernie in a primary.
Yeah, oh my God, if we did Hillary and Bernie again now with our power, with our organizing in 2016 or previous, there was no leftist organizing at all in the United States. We had very minor. Dude, if we did Hillary, if we ran that back with our current organizing and our current power and everyone we have in the House, holy shit, I feel like we would win that by 10 points.
No, it wouldn't happen, guys.
Because here's the thing, though, right? You guys in America, and again, this is like an outsider's perspective. I just want to offer something. I know I'm a Canadian telling you sort of what to do or to give you advice. I know it's not welcome. It's very difficult.
No.
But you guys have the other side of the coin. You know, you guys have got Medicare for all.
Okay, hang on. Well, that's a subject for another time. But here's the thing, right? If I was like me, transplanted as an American, I'm a minority, and as much as I love Bernie and am still so fucking pissed at what the DNC and the media did to him and his campaign, and you're right, Joe Biden does not deserve the nomination. In terms of who am I voting for to sort of have the most impact on leftist politics and to also do the least harm to myself, my friends, my family, my black cousins, father, uncle, grandmother. For me, that has to be Joe Biden and the Democrats, because the alternative is getting gunned down in the street by a cop or some fucking MAGA-hatted militiaman.
Okay.
And the cherry on top about this whole farce is that I agree that Biden is shit, which is precisely why you should get him.
Question?
Because hang on, I'm almost done.
Okay.
Because this coronavirus pandemic and all this economic depression bullshit is going to go on for at least a few more years. So if you hold your nose and vote for Biden and put him in and watch him flounder for a year or two, and that is when you really kick up the leftist rhetoric, but there's no longer the threat of Trump, that is when you really get a leftist army. That is when you can meaningfully show that the Democrats and the media don't know what the fuck they're doing and what they're talking about, and you get the real grassroots change that you want to see and believe America can get.
Well, it sounds good.
I was going to add to that, but you basically said it also. Or everything that Biden fails on or is insufficient on, the left can combat. And Zach, I get your, fear, right? That it's not going to happen. We're just going to go to another, far right Republican after Biden. But I'm saying we need to make sure, people like us who are progressives need to make sure that the movement never stops. That when we continue to see police brutality, that we continue to see racial disparity, that we never stop fighting and we recognize neoliberalism as the problem. Because if Trump is in office, we need to recognize both fascism and neoliberalism as an enemy. And
yeah.
Okay, but I mean, why are we justifying the two? Why are we looking at both are equally damaging to the American people?
They aren't.
No, they're not
equally.
they're not
I'm
equal.
telling you, as a minority, it's not. They're both shitty.
Because compared to fascism, liberalism sounds like a dream.
Yeah, it is still a liberal democracy that works. But bothered boy, you didn't really get in at all there, so you want to give your little.
Yeah, well, so like just to sort of add to what Kama and Occam's have been saying, I mean, I can see where Zach's coming from, and I think it's valid, but it does tend to ignore, as Occam's was saying, the harm that can be done globally and in the next 4 years. Because remember, in 2016, people said, oh, well, look, Trump's just an oaf. How much damage can he do? And here we are in 2020 with, 160,000 dead Americans from coronavirus. And Americans saying, oh, well, that's just the price we have to pay. And okay, some kids are in cages. And the goalposts are always being moved, and that's what's also concerning to me is that sure, okay, yeah, it's got to get worse before it can get better to a certain extent, but quite frankly, to be brutally honest, the left isn't ready for a civil war. The right is, because that's their dream, and they've been training with their and they're waiting for a day to gun us all down.
We'll get so beat
and unfortunately, there's a lot of Americans out there who think that you're at the point where it can still be resolved with some kind of
democracy,
niceties or platitudes, and it's probably not unless you stop it now with Joe Biden. And even then, I can totally see Trump and a bunch of red states say, oh, well, no, they totally rigged it. It's unfair. I call upon the people in the great red states to rise up and separate, and you have a second civil war, like a split off republic or something. I could totally see that happening, even with a Biden presidency. But if the question is who does the least damage and can give you the most returns on advancing the core goals of leftism, I think it has to be Biden, because he does the least amount of damage. You can finally let poor Ruth Bader Ginsburg retire, and you can also get a lot more Americans realizing that neoliberalism is bullshit and it's not working for them anymore.
Yeah,
that's the same stonewall we would get from a Trump administration. You think Trump would pass Medicare for all if it arrived on his desk? No. Neither would Biden.
Okay, but neoliberalism is our fight. Okay, because if Trump is president, then the problem is Trump. If Trump is president, then progressives are forced to work with neoliberals against the Republican Party. But if the Democratic Party is in power, we can work from within the Democratic Party, not only to push them left, but to get new leadership and to get maybe another president in 2024 or 2028, or like Bernie Sanders. Will be more popular than ever due to the BLM protests.
How do we push them?
With grassroots movement and voting for progressive candidates up and down the ballot. This is literally what Bernie told us to do in 2016. And
literally.
people bottom have been doing this, and that's why you finally have people like Rashida Tlaib, you have AOC, you have the squad, what's her name, Cori Bush, the challenger to Amy McGrath, you have what's his name right now, facing Joe Kennedy, Ed Markey or something like that. Like,
Okay, I like it.
there's a lot more that's happening now, and it's because of grassroots people organizing on the ground and slowly but surely taking over judging positions, juries, courthouses, public defending, comptroller,
Describing
congressional, state legislatures. Like, it's slowly but surely happening.
Like right now, when we have one of the largest civil rights
Well, can I
movements of all
respond to
time. Oh yeah, you can respond. Then I got next.
So we have a progressive movement, and that's a beautiful thing and something that's unprecedented. But that doesn't really mean anything. I'm talking about what do we do with it?
It's not big enough yet. We don't have numbers yet. We don't have enough to bargain with.
But we have more numbers than ever.
Yeah.
And we're going to get somewhere more under a Biden presidency than a Trump presidency. That's all. That's the only reason I'm voting for Biden.
And if you consider the rest of the world, we are the biggest number it's ever been. Bothered Boy, for example, had a good point. Like, we need. I'm sorry if like this is a hard point to like. I'm gonna try to get it across. I'm sorry, my English is not the best, but like, dude, what I came in to say is like we also, and you guys, like, you are only in the States except for the man in Canada, right? Like,
Yep.
I'm sorry to pop that kind of North American bubble, but Puerto Rico has been fighting for years and years and years, and we've never stopped. And you know what makes it impossible for us to actually reach anything? Like, the lack of support from actual Americans. You guys just don't fucking help because we don't exist, you know? And even taking this away
Bernie
from
cares about you. Bernie
Excuse me?
Sanders cared about you.
Bernie
Right.
didn't care,
So-
or he
Let
did.
him just continue with his thing.
Just one thing.
Like-
Can you?
If we had a second term with Trump, countries like Brazil, countries like Chile, which is like a burning hell right now, countries like Colombia, like Venezuela, like they will be mega fucked. And like Americans,
Basically, all the cities of my heritage, or all the nations of my heritage. Yeah, pretty much.
yeah, basically.
Hold on,
like-
don't interrupt him. Let him talk.
Oh my boy.